Problem is, if he then says that out of those 10 tests, 9 of them he got 100%, 1 of them he got a 0, and that's landing. You've got a problem. You know, that's going to change things. So one of the things we look at is, and the other thing you do with percentages, if you're averaging things up throughout your time, you're actually being harder and causing more difficulty for that kid that started with nothing versus that kid that started with a strong, you know, knowledge base. We're looking at where they finish, that they have to complete these tasks to be able to move on. So we're working on it. I will tell you, in my 32 years of education, with this, with the way we're doing our evaluations now and so forth, it's the first time that everything is coming together and actually working more consistently and making more sense for what's best for kids. And that's what excites me about the process. It's pushing our teachers pretty hard. You know, we're changing mindsets and so forth. The other thing it is, it's changing the mindset of how we're dealing with kids. And one of the things that we've got a lot of our teachers doing right now is reading that book, Lost in Schools. And if you have a chance to read it, it's actually a really good book. And it talks about behaviors and why kids are doing it and so forth. And I have it right here, but it's being used to hold up the projector. But it's, we're doing a book study on it, and quite a few schools are doing it. But one of the things it looks at is why kids do these behaviors, why they're acting up. You know, as a principal, you know, I was dealing with discipline all the time. But you know, really, I would say almost 90% of the time is because they haven't learned a better way to ask for something, a better way to get something or get away from something. It wasn't like they had planned it out and really sat down and said, I'm going to do this today, you know. And most of the time it's to avoidance or to get something, you know, of some format. So we're changing of why, you know, why we need to not just kick a kid out of a class, but to say, okay, this kid has some needs and we got to figure that out. And I like the tone that it's changing, and it's kind of blending well with the mastery base.
Okay, so the different programs that Moscow School District have, of course, we have a variety of different services, both preventative and reactive, as well as crisis services. Our services, of course, are done by all teachers and all support staff, but also specifically our school counselors, our school psychologists, our school district nurse, and our Safe Schools coordinator. So I'm going to go through the different age groups and talk about a little bit about each of the programs. In the elementary programs, we have a variety of different preventative programs, one of which is Second Step. Second Step is an incredible curriculum. It's designed to be taught in a whole class setting. Usually it's taught by the school counselor, but it's also designed to have the classroom teacher teach it. They're short little 20 to 30 minute lessons. They always start with some sort of story with a tiny video or a picture, and then teach a social or emotional lesson or an anti-violence lesson. So in kindergarten, it starts off on how to be a good student. It teaches you how to sit. It teaches you to look at people when they're talking to you. And then it begins talking about feelings and how to identify feelings and how people's faces look at feelings. Now, we all think, for Pete's sake, we all know that, but actually it's a skill that needs to be taught. And sometimes it's taught at home and learned at home, and sometimes it isn't. Then it goes up, and it actually goes through 8th grade, but in the older grade school grades, it gets into, and some of the lessons are really funny, of getting what you want in an appropriate way, or arguing in an appropriate way, or something like that. And the lesson is essentially trying to convince your parents of something you want to do in an appropriate way, or in uncomfortable positions of, one of the scenario is 2 boys are having a sleepover, and boy's house that they're at is a perfectionist and keeps things, he goes, I like things neat. And this boy is, you know, all over the place, getting all sorts of things, and he's very uncomfortable and doesn't quite know what to do in those situations. So it teaches a lot of different social skills. It also teaches calming down techniques, and I think, at least in the 14 years that I have been in education, I have seen such a high increase in anxiety of kids. They're just anxious kids, and they don't quite know what to do with themselves. And so they actually teach calming down strategies, putting your hand on your tummy, taking a deep breath, counting, talking to yourself, all those different types of things. And I'm going to regress a bit, but I want to tell this one example. I was meeting with a young boy, he was 7, and he was a typical kid with so many traumatic events. He had 2 parents that struggled with substance abuse and were from, you know, kicked out of one place to another all the time. Parents were breaking up, getting back together. And he was telling me about his weekend somewhere in Washington where his dad was doing a construction job, and so mom decided to take him and his brother up there, and then mom proceeded to get drunk and was driving the car with him in the back seat. And he talked about how scared he was because the mom was driving backwards in the car through this campground parking lot really fast. And he didn't know what to do. He was stuck, essentially. And then mom hit some kind of pylon or something, and it stopped the car, and then it wouldn't work anymore. And the cops came and arrested the mom in front of them for DUI. And he said to me that the cops had put him in the back of the cop car to keep him warm while they were dealing with mom. And he says, I knocked on the window and asked the officer if I could go to the bathroom. And he goes, I went into the bathroom, and he says, Mrs. Nikolajczyk, I put my hand on my tummy, and I took a deep breath, and it was the closest I ever came to crying in front of a kid, because I was like, oh. Anyway, and that's the time that I think, this is the reason why we're doing these programs for it. Other elementary schools, they go on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, and this is the 8 Habits of Highly Effective School, and they take a habit once a month, and their whole school works on it, and the principal and the counselor goes around to every single classroom, and they make goals together with their classroom of choosing another habit to work on. We have the Virtues Project. I don't know if it's a very popular program that schools or classes identify different virtues and does activities, and they choose virtues as a school to work on. There's other programs such as Operation Respect, the PATHS program, there's collaborative proactive solutions, and then lots and lots and lots of schools, I think probably every school and many classrooms, really it goes along with the growth mindset that they're putting the power in children's hands of saying, what do you want to be and how are you going to get there? From social emotional goals as well as academic goals. I was just sitting with the grade level team today, and they said her goal was to talk more, and we were concerned because this girl just doesn't talk at all in school, and so she identified that herself, so that was really neat as well. The middle school has lots and lots of programs as well. They have Signs of Suicide Prevention Program, the Respect and Responsibility Day, and these vary from grade to grade. The CORE project, which is teaching social emotional supportive techniques to people, they utilize usually the health and English curriculum to embed mental health topics, oftentimes when they're reading a book, and they involve bullying curriculum as well as suicide prevention curriculum and depression. They also utilize Second Step. The Moss Science Camp is such a fascinating and such an incredible program because it teaches so many team building skills along with science, and we see kids that struggle behaviorally in the classroom just come alive in an outdoor setting. It's really, really something. And what is incredible because the middle school has, what, 600 in some kids. 80% of those kids are participating in some form of extracurricular activity, which it's really fun if you're a middle school track coach with 300 kids. Track team.
Cross country was 90 kids.
Yeah. Good times. And then we move on to the high school, where they have lots of different programs as well. The Youth Empowerment Day, where they have other youth be youth leaders and with the natural helpers. They have a curriculum specific that the counselors and the psychologists go into classrooms and have and teach kids about what depression is and suicide prevention, and what their role can be if they see that, because we know the kids see it amongst their friends more so than with the adults. My own children attend the high school, and they love the therapy dogs during finals week that they just meander around. And there are over 42 clubs and activities that happen at Moscow High School. At Paradise Creek Regional High School, they're on the quarter system, which is a fascinating way because they have a more intense, longer classes, but they get done in a quarter system, so they find more successful that way. And of course, they have outdoor activities, and it really is a family atmosphere. And they provide a lot of those, kind of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those basic human skills that they need, the food, the clothing, all those kinds of things that they help provide.
They have washers and dryers there, so if the kid needs to wash his clothes, or if they have a shower there as well, so a kid. So a lot of these kids, they may have a family that they go home to, but the family may not be there all the time for them, or they're on their own. So we have these, skills or chances for them to kind of regroup at school. So it's a real neat program that we have. The reactive and crisis situations. We do have a crisis team. The crisis team has 17 members in it. It's 8 counselors, 5 teachers, 2 administrators, 1 director, and 1 district nurse. One thing I told them that I'd like to see is 1 secretary too, for school secretary, because when they are not the SWAT team of the school district. They don't go in there when there's an issue going on. They're after the issue. To work with kids. If we have, unfortunately, if you have a death in the school or some, we call the team in. We utilize how many people we feel is needed for that situation. So we may start small with only saying, okay, we want four people to go over there and help the counselor with talking with kids. Or situation, or if the death of a teacher, death of a student, or some type of accident or so forth. If it needs to get bigger and bigger, more help, then we utilize the whole staff for that. We have a program, so does some of the other schools. I know Grangeville, I was on that team down there. Most of the schools that have a team, if another school that didn't have a team needed help, we're sending people to go.
I've been to different districts.
Yeah. We, that's the one thing, like when we had the crisis last year where we had a threat going there, just so you know, all the schools work together. I mean, everyone, it doesn't matter if they're a private school, charter school, public school, traditional school. Kids are kids. We're going to help each other out in those situations. So you can just know that that's happening in your school. They typically, they do trainings every other month, and they do scenarios. We have packets